Hello, friends or enemies. This is mid-part neckbeard glasses with a sore throat Sam. And it's been blowing a lot of dust in my town lately, like an obscene amount. And my poor little scratchy throat is kind of succumbing to all that. So forgive me. Maybe this is the ASMR that God always wanted me to do. But I'm going to be talking a lot softer in this video just because my throat hurts. Nonetheless, my brain shares a similar feeling because I have been messing around with different routing configurations with my Kemper. And a long time ago, and by long I mean, I've had the Kemper for probably 3-ish years, probably a little longer. Actually, I think it was pre-pandemic that I bought it. I'm not 100% sure, but so I'm going to say probably about 2 or 3 years ago when, much like right now, I had too much time on my hands. I decided to do a test of the different outputs on the Kemper and hear what they sounded like. And if you're not familiar, or if you don't own one or you don't have yours right in front of you, you've got a main output, which is a left and right. Then you've got a monitor output, which as far as I know is a single mono unbalanced TS, like a guitar cable. And then you've got a direct output, which is a TRS balanced connection, still mono. And then you've got the SPDIF output, which is a digital protocol, and that is a stereo across a single cable. And I wanted to hear what the quality difference was amongst, I don't know, one of those, amongst, I'm going to use that, those different outputs, because I noticed that when I was practicing and plugging directly into the headphone jack in the front, it sounded absolutely magical. And when I would record tracks here in the studio through the main output, I may have been doing like some DI, like dry, unprocessed guitar, that kind of thing. But the main output, I just noticed it was like not quite as magical and amazing. And I figured like, well, maybe that's just the fact that I don't have two speakers blasting directly into my ears. I've seen people on the Kemper forums, saying make sure you don't have the space thing turned on, which is just like a really like a room reverb basically for headphones and things like that. And there's also an output EQ for a couple of the different outputs, like the monitor and the main, I believe is all that it gives you. But nonetheless, there are some options that can definitely lead to drastically different results. But that's not what I was hearing. I was hearing a difference in sort of depth and quality of transient response, as if there was an impedance mismatch. Yeah, an impedance mismatch. And first, let's just say that's about where my knowledge in electricity ends. I know that impedance mismatches can lead to thin or dull sounds depending on which way they are mismatched. And beyond that, I mean, I kind of get the general, like the water hose analogy that people have made to me. I understand it to some extent, but that's about where that ends. So certainly this is not an expert analysis. It is an attempt at an analysis, and more of just an inquisition. Call this video the Caucasian Inquisition. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to switch over now to my screen capture. Boink. so that you guys can see some different tracks that I've recorded, and what I have that I am comparing today is the monitor output versus the direct output, because recently I stumbled across this wonderful video that was showing some different output configurations for the Kemper. And this is not a new video at all, as far as I know. It's a Kemper official video, and you can find it on YouTube. I'll try to link to it or something, but it's out there. And so because of it, I've been experimenting with some different configurations again. And for a long time, I was doing main output stack, and let me see what it says. Yeah, just stack. And now that I have stopped doing that, I don't really have a good reason as to why I was doing that, which is why I stopped doing it. Because essentially what I would get was a like left and right that equaled a mono. So like it was kind of pointless. Lately what I've been doing that I've really been enjoying, because I don't really reamp. I don't like having to take a DI and route that and record it and have this annoying little extra track hanging around that I'm never going to use for me. And two, I just never feel like, well, actually there's a 2.1 to this. So two, I never feel like I get the results I want if I reamp. It's like, if I'm not happy with the way it came out, I should just re-record it. I'm not a reamping fan. Maybe there could be a case made for like taking the same take and doing a couple different amplifiers on it to like thicken up the tone. That would be totally great. Feel free to do that. Me, I don't tend to do that. That's just the way that I do things. Recently, in the last sessions that I have been doing, I've been doing the dry amp sound, which is called stack, on the direct output, and then using the main outputs left and right for just a delay reverb wet. Obviously, if you are familiar with the Kemper, you know that may leave some modulation to be desired. I've done some different things. I'm going to forgo that right now, not what I'm interested in. What I am interested in is that when I was rewatching that video that Kemper put out, they suggested on one of the configurations using a similar configuration that I'm using, which is where I got the idea, which was main output, left, right, wet, and then using the monitor output for the stack. But here's where it gets interesting if you've made it this far. When I did those very unscientific just listening tests before, the monitor output was the worst sounding one subjectively to me. And before, the reason I add that disclaimer, like worst sounding subjectively to me, is because that could be just a volume difference. It could be a difference in, I don't buy crappy cables, so I don't think there's going to be a gigantic difference in the cables that I use. But just playing devil's advocate here, maybe I was using a crappy cable. Maybe I was using a really long cable and comparing it to a very short, high quality cable. I just didn't gather enough real, even remotely scientific evidence to, on the internet, make a stance. I just found that I didn't really like the sound of the monitor output, and that by and large, I felt like the headphone out was the best sounding one, but not if you took that output and plugged it into a line in or preamp or instrument in or anything like that. And that's where we get into the impedance matching, being important, I believe, because it's not so much about some magical fairy of quality that lands on one output or the other that makes it sound good. I think it has to do with which outputs are set at what impedance levels, or possibly what even like voltage levels. I'm not really sure. And then how those then react to your interface's input levels. So I believe I said that correctly. Like I'm speculating hugely here, but this is just my train of thought basically. So getting back to the tracks that I've recorded in Pro Tools, now that I've really set the stage, and again, this is me trying to understand stuff and really just be thorough and make the best guitar tracks that I possibly can. Because I love the Kemper so much. I truly love the Kemper. I used to own a deluxe reverb, and that was my main amp. I gigged with that thing. I recorded with that thing, and I loved that thing to death. But I didn't love lugging it around, and I didn't love putting it in a trailer and getting it beat up and all that stuff, case or not. So, plus it just had its sound, and with the Kemper I can get any sound, but if you probably already know this. So anyways, to the video, to the actual topic. What I have recorded here are a couple different, tracks, and they're all duplicates. Like each set is the same take. And the reason I've done this is because I really wanted to get to the bottom of whether or not there was a difference between the monitor out and the direct out, because my recollection was that the monitor out sounded bad. Like, it wasn't an EQ thing. It was a transient response or dynamic range sort of thing, where it just sort of like if you've ever plugged into a really cheap interface or mixer, and then you've plugged into a really nice interface or mixer, the level of quality in terms of the preamp and the dynamic range and all of that stuff, you notice a big difference in, like, let's say like a Focusrite Scarlett Solo versus I don't know, your Universal Audio Apollo, or like my RME Fireface, and that's what I noticed back then. So my first little unofficial test here was to hear what happened if I recorded a guitar into my Kemper straight in, and then sent the same signal out of the monitor output and the direct output. And I'm going into the line ins on my RME Fireface. And to see if what I was hoping for is that I would just get the exact same thing. I could duplicate it and then flip the phase and null, like the two audio clips would null each other. And that is not, interestingly, what happened. So and I'll show you the results of that, but I guess that leads me to the next question is, like, are the results of what happened enough for me to pick one over the other? Is this normal? Is this intentional? And yeah, the first thing, like, ultimately, does this equal one having a higher quality result than the other? So let's hear what we got. I recorded these with my SG on the neck pickup, just straight into the Kemper, and I was being a silly little goober at first and didn't realize that I had my monitor output turned all the way down. And so what I ended up doing was switching both the monitor output and direct output to Get Studio, I believe. Is that right? Yeah. Because those were the only things that would pass signal, and I was like, what the heck's going on? Then I figured out I had the monitor output turned all the way down, because that's also the control for the cab that I sometimes have connected. So anyways, I'm going to play one at a time, first of all. That's probably really quiet. Let me group those real quick. And for the sake of this, I'm just going to turn them up by like 6 dB because it's probably really quiet. Oh, it didn't. Oh, I have the groups turned off, of course. There we go. Okay. Very sleepy, very dull, very boring. That's just to the random tempo that Pro Tools was set at, probably 120. And that was the first thing that came to mind. So that's the monitor out. This is the direct out. I don't notice a difference. Eagle-eyed ones of you will notice that there's a half dB difference between these audio tracks. That is because when I flipped over here between the two, I was getting about a half dB difference in the peak values. So you can see minus 29.1, minus 29.6. Should I have gained that up? Sure, bite me. I didn't. So they don't sound different, but are they different? And the answer is apparently yes. So first things first is if I play them together, they're both panned to the center. And naturally, what I want to do is simply flip the phase and see what happens. So let's do that. And you might be thinking, oh, they completely disappeared. And the answer is that they almost completely disappeared. And I don't know if that matters. I'm not sure when you call it a null and when you don't. I would just assume that it would actually completely disappear, and not just mostly. Like, for example, if I took this and I duplicated it, and then I put this on there to flip the phase, I truly get nothing. I actually get nothing. But the same cannot be said for these two with the phase flipped and the volume matched at least as close as I can. And it's certainly more than a 0.1 dB difference that's not nulling. You can see the meter reaching up to minus 50. And I can hear it a little bit. I notice got a little bit of noise on the top end. That's probably normal. But I notice around that fundamental on the bass note, about 120, is pretty strong. And another thing that I was doing to just kind of see what was up was panning them out. Maybe. Left and right. Sorry, that's a different track. And then looking to see if those two things are centered. Perfectly mono. So this is Ozone Ozone Imager. And as you can see, like, kind of mostly, yeah, but not. Like, not the same as if I actually went. See, that's what I want to see mono-wise. And see, that's with the 2 tracks panned hard left, hard right, volume matched. Is this enough to matter? I don't know. I still don't know the answer to does the monitor out suck, so to speak. So I did some other tests because I can see that they're different. I do want to point out real quick also the first audio clip that I've recorded here that I just showed you, both of those outputs were connected with a TRS cable of the exact same length. Even though I knew the monitor out was just a TS, that's what I did, and that's what I had. And since I was having that issue with the monitor output being turned down and me being a dummy, I thought maybe it was the cable. Maybe it was like a pin that wasn't connecting to the right tip or sleeve on the inside. So I went ahead and got out a short TS cable, just a guitar patch cable that I had laying around that's in good condition, and then connected the monitor output with that one and did some overdrive tones. Excuse me. And once I did that, there was a much bigger volume discrepancy. That was the first thing that I noticed. And you'll notice the names of these are stack ? Because I was pretty sure that I selected stack. But then after messing with the settings and just double checking things again, to make sure that I didn't have any EQ or different settings on one or the other, I scrolled back and noticed that they were set to mod left and mod right. So take this one with a grain of salt. I did go back and do another one that was for sure stack, but take this next test with a grain of salt. So that's them together. And then I'm going to play them and flip the phase. And you can see that there's even more of a, how would you say that? There's even less of a null. And maybe that is the difference between a TS cable and a TRS. I'm not sure. I'm not at all like blaming the Kemper, simply asking some questions and trying to figure some stuff out. Because not only am I curious, but whenever I look on the Kemper forums, it's usually people that do have some settings changed. They might start out with the same sorts of inquiries that I have, like, hey, do these sound the same? Or, hey, how come this one sounds better? Or how come this output sounds worse? Or how come it sounds different? And most of the time they end up having a setting wrong, and that accounts for it. But a couple times there have been some threads that are just open-ended and nobody really has an actual answer, and they're all just responding and saying, well, you probably have a setting change, or, oh, you probably have an effect on one, and blah, blah, blah. And in this case, I know that's not the case. But this is also a second look at an issue I heard long ago for myself, and knowing now that automatically between an unbalanced and a balanced cable, I was reading on the forum that there is a 6 dB difference, but what I'm detecting in the tracks is more like a, what was it, like a minus 5-ish difference. Actually, I've got this set at minus 4.1. Let's see if that's still true. Because I'm willing to be wrong, and I definitely want to make sure that I get these volume matched. So I'm going to keep the phase flipped, and I'm going to look at the peak values here. And yeah, that's a 4.1 dB difference. So that's how I have them compensated. And you can hear if I take one and start to shift it out of equal volume, then you'll hear how it starts to get louder because of the phase. Except they're linked. Now you'll hear that. Yeah, and what's interesting there is I can move it just like the moment I move it away from that minus 4.1, I start to be able to hear it get louder. So that's another way that I can kind of verify for myself that I do want to have a 4.1 dB discrepancy between these two tracks for the best chance of nulling them. And still, that's not happening. And if I take a look at the master fader while they both play out of phase, now we're hitting above minus 50, and there's quite a bit going on. Especially in the low end and the top end of the guitar around 3.5K. Another aside that I've always noticed about the Kemper, at least my Kemper, I don't know if this is an issue or not. Certainly it doesn't audibly make a difference to me. But there's always been this big peak up at like 20K. Let me see if it happens on the other one. Yeah, see that? Right there, 22. My theory is that that's some sort of aliasing artifact because it's at 22 and maybe it's like 22 and some change, and maybe something is happening at 44.1 kilohertz, and it's producing this resonance at 22.5K. I'm not really sure. But it looks like it's 22.5K, so that looks like an aliasing sort of thing, which is kind of strange, and I wish it wasn't happening, but nonetheless, it's not like something that I'm like hearing per se. It's just that I want to make sure I'm getting, good quality and all that in my recordings. And I don't want to piss off the dogs, that can hear that. So yeah, I thought that was kind of strange that they're not completely nulling out. So I thought, okay, well, maybe I accidentally chose the wrong output. So let's make sure to do the exact same recording, and we'll make sure that I do stack on monitor output and direct output. No, I'm looking at them right now, and I recorded another set of tracks, another take of that same thing that I just played. So first I'll play them together. I want to hear the other ones now. I feel like those sound different, those takes. But I bet you... Well, no, I don't know that that's the case. It's possible that I was on a different setting on the guitar. You know how comparing different takes can be, but the the tones certainly sound different, and I don't have anything turned on the modulation slots on the Kemper, so that's a little odd. But again, I don't know that they were the same guitar settings for sure. So let's just deal with these two together. And I'm seeing minus 15.4, minus 19.5. So that's, again, a 4.1 dB difference. So I've got one compensated. And now I'll flip the phase. And same thing. There's quite a bit. There's not a difference, as far as I can tell, between these two takes that I did, whether they were accidentally on mod left, mod right, versus just both for sure being on stack. It doesn't seem to affect the results in any sort of significant way. There's still quite a bit of discrepancy between the two tracks in terms of whether or not they null. And like, that's all like a bunch of dumb nerd stuff. So does it matter? Does it matter to the listener? Can you hear it? Does one sound better than the other? Let's see if we can hear a difference. I did just realize that well, no, because they're compensated. So I was about to say these are at different volume levels, but then I'm like, oh wait, they're supposed to be. And just to be certain, I've not got any of this plugin activated. I don't have any bands on this activated, nothing like that. I feel like I'm hearing a difference, but I want to be able to switch more efficiently, and so I'm going to take my other take and put it on a playlist so that I can just solo and unsolo it and switch between. There will be a volume discrepancy that I'm going to try to treat with gain. When I did this a while ago, I thought it was odd that matching it with my ear made me end up at a -3 volume turn down. I can't think of words right now. Versus a -4.1, which is a very specific number. I get that. But typically I'm able to hear at least like half dB to 1 dB increments. So why don't we first try turning this one down 4.1 dB in terms of gain? And maybe I'm silly for doing that. Maybe that's not the same thing as volume. I figure it would be if I'm not running into any sort of dynamics processing. Okay, well I can't do 4.1, so I'll do 4.0. And let's listen and see if they sound like they're the same volume. And they do. It's interesting. I don't know that I'm really noticing any difference now. Why don't I try looping them? Do something. I'm going to actually do a relatively short loop. I feel like there might be a slight volume discrepancy now. I'm going to attempt to just level them out by ear. Try to confuse myself by clicking it a whole bunch of times. It doesn't help because I looked. Okay. Eyes closed, I genuinely feel like this one has more dynamic range. Like on the palm mutes, it's chugging in the low end more, and it's like there's greater, I hate to sound all hoogly boogly and all sorts of stuff, but it feels a little more open in the sense that there's greater dynamic range and things don't feel as squashed. And it's like a really small difference, but I can tell. And I don't know if I'm crazy or not. I tried to make myself not crazy by closing my eyes and confusing myself. And even like within the first couple of clicks back and forth, I could tell which one was which. And I was like, there's no way. I'll do it one more time, okay? And I'm not gonna look. I'm gonna make sure that I'm on there. Okay, I'm on there. I'm not gonna look. I legitimately have no idea how many times I clicked. I'm gonna hit play, and I'm gonna close my eyes. Eyes closed. My initial thoughts are that is the monitor output. Okay, I'm going to try to click it again. My hand is without moving the mouse. And also, I should be able to tell if I've moved the mouse and I'm not clicking anything. That's the direct output. Yeah, I can hear a difference. And I don't think it's like if that volume difference of like point however many dB, because I'm trying to match it by ear. I'm at -4, so I either either I'm hearing a 0.1 dB volume difference, which I don't think I am, or there's a difference in the way that those outputs sound, and that bothers me. Man, I wish that didn't bother me, but well, maybe that's the wrong thing to say. It bothers me. It bothers me that those things sound different, and that it sounds like I'm getting a higher dynamic range in the direct output. I have no idea if you'll be able to hear this after I upload it to YouTube or whatever. No idea. But I'm listening on really nice monitors. I've got Neumann KH310s that I'm listening to this on. And before, when I did the test, I didn't have these monitors. I had some, JBL LSR 308s. They were the Mark 1s, and I could tell a difference then, too. The monitor output, when I was doing stuff, it just tended to be like more muddy, and I just wasn't as pleased. And it was especially noticeable when I would plug some headphones into the front and be like, wow, the Kemper sounds amazing. And then it's like the main outputs sound the best, then the direct output, and then the monitor output is like, good thing it's the monitor output because it's about as good as it needs to be. And it's just not satisfying to me, unfortunately. I haven't tried running the stack through the SPDIF stuff. I've done wet. I've done delay reverb wet through that, and it's been very useful to be able to do that. I have had some problems with like clicks and pops intermittently, and I'm not sure exactly why. Because that could be, I don't know. That could be so many different things. But I'm not immediately just going to write that off. But I have noticed clicks and pops when I'm doing really long reverbs and things like that. Yeah, I don't know. Am I crazy? Does anyone else hear this same thing? I don't know if it'll translate to YouTube. I'm hoping that the levels I played everything at were acceptable. I tried to look at the meter and get my voice at a reasonable level because I was going to be talking so quiet, but then also have Pro Tools at a good volume and all that. So hopefully that was the case. It's just, it's a bit bothersome because it's so close to being like, I'm not going to say perfect. Nothing is perfect, but it's like, that's the sort of thing that keeps my mind open to shopping for other products. Like there's I think the Isotope something now, I can't remember, or the Quad Cortex. Is it Isotope? I don't know. I'll Google it later, but I think it's the same company that's made like the iRig and stuff like that, or IK Multimedia. Anyways, if it is that brand, dude, I don't know how people use the iRig products. I hate to say it. I hate to trash something like that, but those things suck, man. They're like, they're bad. They're cheap feeling. Like I feel like I could like crush it in my hand. And not only that, but they're just noisy preamps and like, ugh. The build quality's bad. The sound quality's bad. All of it's bad. And they're really overpriced and I hate them. I owned one for like maybe an hour and it sucked. I owned one of the higher end ones too. I can't remember. It was the iRig Studio 2 or I don't remember, but it was like a higher end one. This was recent as well. So anyways, enough about that because that's not what the video is about. But yeah, I don't know. It's weird. It's really weird. All of this stuff is just not quite. I mean, I don't need it to be perfect because if somebody was going to throw out an explanation of like, well, the left and right are going to be subtly different because they're generating slightly different, transient. Let's say that there's a process going on independently for left and right channels. I'd be like, cool, that sounds good. I want it to be different. I want it to be imperfect because it's supposed to sound like a tube amp. I want that. But I don't want it to sound squashed and lower quality, even if it's in a sense like this where it's like, it's only like 10 to 15% difference, but to me, it's enough to make me go, yeah, that one's better. And I can pick it out with my eyes closed. And that's saying something. And I don't think there's enough of a volume discrepancy to, when I'm A-Bing them, on the playlist, because it's not a volume discrepancy that I'm hearing. It's not like, ooh, that one's louder just across the board. It's in the palm mutes and it's in the fizzle on top. Both of those things sound more dynamic on the direct out. And if I can buy a different cable with a different impedance or something, then, send me a link if that solves the problem. But I can't imagine that it's my cable because I'm using two of the same cables and I'm using high quality cables. They're not like stupid, ridiculous like Mogami Golds, but they're Livewire Advantage, so they're fine. Is that the middle? Anyways, I normally buy the Elites, but in this case, that's what I had on hand. And they're great and they're new-ish. Never had any problems, and certainly not amongst two of identical cables or anything like that. And it's like maybe in these there would be a difference because I'm using a balanced cable and an unbalanced cable. Maybe that's cause for a greater discrepancy. But the greatest discrepancy I saw was like, okay, it's a bigger volume jump between balanced and unbalanced. Okay. But then when I was using two TRS cables, maybe, since the output of the monitor is only unbalanced and the output of the direct is balanced, maybe there's still something there. But when using the exact same cables, I was only coming up with a half dB difference in terms of the volume. And even then, when perfectly volume matched, I was still getting not perfect phase cancellation, not perfect null. And that's what I want if I want them to be identical. I don't, or if they're not, I want to know what one is intended for and how to get the best quality out of it. And what is frustrating is that when questions like this are asked on the Kemper forums, people just explain it away and say, no, they're identical. They're absolutely identical. There's no difference whatsoever. And I am not buying it. They are different. There's got to be something different. If I'm wrong, great. I will be astounded though, because I can hear it and I can pick it out with my eyes closed, and I'd be really confused. But at least, if somebody could show me that technically, no, they are the exact same signal path, resulting in the same signal coming out, I would go, okay, it must be another part of my signal chain. And in that case, I would go, okay, great. Let me learn what that is so that I can fix it. But in this case, it seems like the issue is originating with the Kemper, because I've never had any issue with like cables or different out or inputs on the RME or anything like that. I would think like maybe I'm using the wrong cable, or maybe I'm plugging it into the wrong input voltage or input impedance, and I don't even know where to begin with that. Well, I know where to begin with it, but I wouldn't know how to solve that on my own. So that would be something I would need help with, which is part of the reason I'm making this video. It's really like the main reason I wanted to make the video. I'm going to look, and this is the point where an entire hour-long video could just be rendered like completely useless. So let's look real quick. My Kemper is coming in on 1 and 2. And they're named weird things right now. Kemper stack of floor tom, who knows, whatever. Let's see. So both of these are set to the same like digital gain level or whatever. So something that would be bad is like if one were set to +4 is that a dBu and the other one wasn't. Perhaps they both should be set to that. I can't remember off the top of my head. But for now, I'm going to leave them where they were, because I don't know which direction people were telling me it goes in, if +4 is consumer or professional. That's a whole other thing and just kind of arbitrary terms. So, yeah. So that's my video. Oh, Canada. Cold coffee. Feels great on my throat. Yeah, it bothers me, and I demand answers. No, I just want to know, man, like, what are the differences? Are there differences? Am I connecting something wrong? But I will look on camera right now at all of my settings. I have monitor output, direct output, both set to stack. Monitor volume, direct volume, both set to -3 dB. Nothing funky clicked on. Monitor cab off is not selected, so everything is the same. Monitor output EQ is flat. Main output EQ is flat. Output filter is off. Output add-ons. I have pure cabinet turned on, and I have space set to headphones only. Oddly, the SPDIF clock is set to 48K, so I don't know why I'm getting aliasing at 44 or 22 and a half. I don't know if that is what that is. And then nothing else of any interest remains. Monitor volume -3. I don't have bass boost on. I don't have Kemper cone turned on or anything like that. Yeah. So that is what I would call weird. And I don't know what the dealio is. So I don't know. Maybe you've lasted through this entire... Ouch. It hurts every time I swallow. It sucks. Maybe you've lasted through this entire video. Maybe not. Maybe I'll go down in history for exposing the lies of the Kemper outputs and what they're saying. Maybe I just have the wrong cable for the job, and I need to buy a higher quality cable. I need a gold-plated, dwarven forged. Sometimes the brand Megami just I immediately like. I don't know, cringe a little bit, not because they don't make good products, they do, but because of fanboys and elitists out there. I buy good quality cables. I have some Livewire Elites. Those are the XLRs I buy. So I believe in it up to a certain point. Like you've listened to all of the insanity that I'm willing to go through to figure out which one of my outputs is the best. So I've done the same thing with cables before and figured out like the different types of braiding and shielding or the different types of shielding and what's best and blah, 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 and gone, okay, there is an advantage in the Livewire Elite series. Okay, cool. Do I want to spend, $1,000 for a 3-inch cable? No, but I do anyways. And in reality, it's like, I think it was like $80 for like a 25-foot cable or something like that. They're expensive. They're really, or maybe it was more. I don't know. Who cares? But yeah, that's the video. I'd love to know answers. I'd love to know where I'm wrong, where I'm going wrong. I wish this video wasn't so long, but that's how it came out. So I don't know if anybody will watch this. Christoph, if you're watching, I love this product and I just want to know what I'm doing wrong and how to get the most out of it. Ideally, I just want to have a mono guitar dry and a left-right wet, and then maybe like a mod guitar too. That would be great. So, and I just want them all to sound good and be punchy and have dynamic range and sound awesome. And that's it. I'm gonna turn off now. I am interested in the fact that I came to the same conclusion that I came to before. So it's not a huge difference. It's not a huge difference, but there's a little bit of like 3D texture. And then the fact that they don't null is strange to me. And it's sort of like the same. It's the same amount of difference that would cause me to spend more money. That's the sort of thing I'm talking about here. If there was a difference in 2 preamps, and let's say one was $300 and the other one was $1,000. I wouldn't buy the $300 one. I would either not do anything, or I would save my money and eventually get the $1,000 one just because it was better. And that is going to have a cascading effect when you're doing many, many tracks, which I do lots of guitar tracks. So I want to make sure that what's cascading is dynamics and punchiness and goodness and reality, or I should say realism, and not mushy gushy stuff, and flat MP3 quality, which is a bit hyperbolic, but it just, it adds up. So, all right. Well, neckbeard, mid part, glasses, sore throat, Sam out. I hope you guys have a great rest of whatever period of time you're living in.